Hello everyone, please press subscribe, press follow, press the bell so you don't miss any new clips. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Author by Heavenly Overlord. Translator by NYOI Studio. Audio novels by Novelist. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 96. Test of Constitution. Han Ji had long had lewd thoughts about Ruo Lan. Furthermore, Han Ji had been favored by an elder in the faction and was his personal disciple. His status was extraordinary. But Ruo Lan was deeply in love with Li Guang, even though she had never admitted it. Then, Han Ji had assaulted her and blamed Li Guang. Li Guang was still as furious as ever, 100 years later. Li Guang had contributed much to the faction, so the faction had given him a chance. He was sent to Xuanhuan in order to find a suitable disciple within 100 years. Zhu Rong went with him. Whoever found the most talented disciple would obtain a Lixian token, and they could consequently request anything within the power of the faction master. With Li Guang's Lixian token, he intended to investigate the incident and clear his name. He did not want Ruo Lan to misunderstand him for eternity. He had waited for this moment on Xuanhuan for 100 years, getting old and haggard. The holy disciples were all touched by his story. Who had known the Holy King had such a tragic story? What kind of patience and willpower must he possess to be willing to wait 100 years for this opportunity? He had spent his whole life waiting for the chance to explain everything to the love of his life and clear his name. Su Yu, I will never forget your act of benevolence, Li Guang thanked him. Su Yu shook his head. You did me a favor by nurturing me, I should repay you. You have given me an opportunity to see the Zhenlong continent. I should be the one thanking you. Li Guang was apologetic. Even though you are a holy disciple, I never taught you anything. It is too bad. My life is coming to an end. I will die within a month. I'm afraid I am unable to teach you any longer. Teacher. All the holy disciples fell to the ground in disbelief. Even though the Holy King was more than 100 years old, he was still spirited and hearty. He was overall very healthy. How could he only have a month to live? Zhu Rong, who was standing to the side, grimaced. Your Holy King was attacked multiple times by Han Ji when he came to Xuanhuan. Once, he was injured and became ill. For him to survive this long, it's a miracle. 1 month. Only 1 month to live. Everybody was in grief. Even if the Holy King was proven innocent, he could never spend his life together with the person he loved. Was his life worth it, then? Get up, all of you. In this life, all I wished for was to prove my innocence to Ruo Lan. I will die with no regrets. You all need not grieve me once I'm gone. Li Guang's old face wore a satisfied smile. Whoosh. A huge gale blew in from above and the sky suddenly turning dark. Everyone lifted their heads, only to see a huge, strange bird with a 300-foot wingspan circling down from the heavens. The wind gusts it conjured howled and whipped around everyone on the ground. Its magnificent aura blanketed the surroundings. Su Yu had to use his vital energy to remain upright, and even then only barely managed to keep his feet on the ground. He squinted his eyes as he looked up. The horrifyingly strange bird's energy was strong, similar to Li Guang and Zhu Rong. The eyes of the strange bird carried a human-like arrogance as they scanned the crowd below. Rumble. The weird bird landed, creating a storm. Sand, stone, and dust were kicked up into the air. Hee hee. It's over. That was faster than imagined, a mocking voice came from within the dust. Looking in the direction of the voice, a green-robed youth of about 20 years old calmly stood atop the giant bird's back. His appearance was normal and his aura was suppressed as if he were a normal youth. His eyes, however, stood out. They were unnaturally bright as they gazed across the crowd, like rays of sunlight. Whoosh. The green-robed team descended from the bird, turning to look at Li Guang. Old man Li Guang, your body seems fine. I'm shocked you're not dead after Master's beating. Insolence. He dares to humiliate a holy king. Zhao Guang furiously grunted. The green-robed youth squinted his eyes, staring at Zhao Guang. Thud, thud, thud. With just a glare, Zhao Guang stumbled back and choked, blood gurgling up his throat. He was appalled. Even Li Guang was unable to injure him with just a glare. Ants dare be so loud. The green-robed youth smiled coldly. So what if I insult a holy king? They are the lowest life form in the faction, they're not even worthy of being disciples. Li Guang took a step forward, shielding the holy disciples behind him. His eyes were calm. You are a disciple of Han Ji. You've already surpassed the level of a holy king and have reached the dragon realm. He may be evil, but he was lucky to get you as a disciple. He must be much luckier than you. How else would he get your woman as his concubine? The green-robed youth gave a mocking laugh. Li Guang's pupils dilated and he stepped back in shock. His voice trembled. You mean to say, Ruo Lan has become Han Ji's concubine? Han Ji forced her. It was imaginable that Ruo Lan had been so devastated and isolated after the attack that Han Ji had been able to take advantage of her once more, manipulating her and stealing her freedom. A bolt of anger and grief welled up in Li Guang's heart. Han Ji had hurt and violated her. But Ruo Lan, both ignorant of the truth and alone following the assault, had become his concubine while Li Guang was sent to an island for 100 years. The whole situation was a tragedy in its purest form. What right do you, an ousted disciple of the faction, have to speak the name of my master's woman? The green-robed youth's gaze turned cold. He surveyed the surroundings. I am the core disciple of the Lixian faction, Xuanhuan. I received orders to test your constitution, as well as to bring you to the Zhenlong continent. The top 5 of the fight of the century, step forward. Xuanhuan ordered. Lu Guang, Meng Lang, and Jiang Xin stepped forward from Fenguang Valley. Su Yu and Zhao Guang stepped forward from the sanctuary. Xuanhuan looked at him, his gaze lingering on Li Guang, Su Yu, and Zhao Guang. His gaze was cold. Whoosh. Xuanhuan flew to the puppet, pointing between its brows with his index finger. The puppet opened its mouth to deliver a piece of paper with the rankings of the top 5. The top among them was Su Yu from the sanctuary. Xuanhuan's gaze turned icy. That meant Lu Guang had obtained the Lixian token. He hid his displeasure at this realization before turning back to face the group. Xuanhuan took out a transparent crystal ball from his sleeve, coming to the front of the 3 from Fenguang Valley. You, put your hands on it, Xuanhuan ordered Jiang Xin. Jiang Xin felt a mixture of fear and respect, swallowing deeply before placing her petite hands on the crystal ball. Sizzle. The crystal ball turned a deep red color as 2 words manifested on the surface, worthless spirit. Such a useless constitution, and you want to enter the Zhenlong continent. Scram. Xuanhuan chided her. Jiang Xin's petite body trembled, her face white as a sheet. She had lost the right to enter the Zhenlong continent. Bitter tears fell from her face and her shoulders trembled. Jiang Xin sat on the floor and cried loudly. This mysterious continent's entry requirements were too cruel. Xuanhuan did not bother with Jiang Xin, instead pointing toward Meng Lang. Meng Lang quivered. He swallowed deeply as he placed his hands on the ball. The crystal ball turned red before showing a row of words. Low-grade yellow class spirit, Cao sighed, only a deserted island would have people of such poor potential. You will be the bottommost scum in the Zhenlong continent. Meng Lang was not humiliated, but was instead elated. He had the right to enter the Zhenlong continent. This is the test of your constitution, Li Guang whispered to Su Yu and Zhao Guang. What is a constitution? Su Yu asked. Holy kings differ from martial artists in the fact that we possess holy power. But holy power is only known as such in the Xuanhu continent. Its true name is spiritual energy. It is an energy far surpassing vital energy. Only by absorbing spiritual energy can you break through to levels above the Holy King, Li Guang said gravely. Whether you can absorb vital energy, or the rate of absorption of vital energy depends on your constitution. Most people cannot absorb vital energy. They are worthless spirits, like Jiang Xin. And most people absorb vital energy at a slow rate, like Meng Lang, who has low-grade yellow class spirit. Constitutions are split into 4 different types: heaven, earth, dark, and yellow. Low-grade yellow class constitution is the lowest, and its rate of absorption is the slowest. His progress will be limited. Dark spirits are of a higher quality, but dark spirits are extremely rare. Earth and Heaven constitutions are only legends. The Lixian faction has never had people with either of those constitutions. Su Yu and Zhao Guang finally had a general understanding. Only by having a constitution that could absorb holy power or spirit energy could they progress above the Holy King. Otherwise, they were fated to remain stagnant at level 9 peak of the martial paths. But did the two of them have the required constitution? Su Yu was worried. You need not have to worry too much. We can see who has the constitution required way back in the early stages of your development as a martial artist. People with a suitable constitution have higher levels of perception and cultivate new techniques much higher and faster than the average person. Li Guang consoled them. While Jiang Xin was in the top 5, she relied on hidden weapons to earn her position. Her perception and cultivation speed were not great. Thus, it was normal for her to have a worthless spirit. Su Yu, your level of perception is extremely strong, and the speed of your cultivation is shocking. I am curious about how high your constitution is, Li Guang said with a smile. Zhao Guang was visibly envious. Su Yu, being such an outstanding figure, might continue to be a genius, even in the Zhenlong continent. Gao Xuan pointed to Lu Guang. Lu Guang was nervous as he put his hand on the ball. The red light glowed, and the words, high-grade yellow class spirit, appeared. Gao Xuan lifted his brows, visibly surprised. After a moment, he regained his composure and smiled politely. Junior Lu Guang, the Lixian faction is a complicated place with many powers at play. You, being a newcomer, will definitely be oppressed. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come find me. Lu Guang was surprised at the affection, his face turning red. Yes, thank you, Senior Cao Xuan, he cautiously replied. Li Guang was surprised, his expression slightly grave, to think Lu Guang had such high potential. Cao Xuan wants to recruit him as a disciple under Han Ji. All Fenguang Valley disciples had been tested. Cao Xuan's expression turned cold as he pointed as Zhao Guang, you. Come over. Zhao Guang's heart beat wildly as he placed his hand on the crystal ball. The red light shined and the words, medium-grade yellow class spirit, appeared. Zhao Guang was elated, visibly surprised. Cao Xuan looked over to Li Guang and exhaled briskly, to think you managed to find someone just barely capable of making the cut. Unhappy, Cao Xuan's gaze finally landed on Su Yu. As king of the century, Su Yu's constitution might be shocking. Cao Xuan pursed his lips, feeling a little uneasy. His expression was grave as he stepped forward and placed the crystal ball in front of Su Yu. Li Guang, Zhu Rong, Lu Guang, Zhao Guang, and the rest watched carefully. Lu Guang's constitution was at high-grade yellow class. Could Su Yu have the rare dark class constitution? Su Yu cautiously placed his hand on the ball. The crystal ball glowed a soft red before a shocking small line appeared. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 97. When one door shuts, another opens. Everyone was dumbfounded. Confusion and doubt mixed with their conflicted expressions. After a moment, Cao Xuan secretly let out a sigh of relief. Worthless spirit, hey, you surprised me. After the flash of red light, the phrase, worthless spirit, was clearly visible. Li Guang was astonished, finding it all hard to believe. How could? Your level of perception and your speed of cultivation are all much higher than the average person's. How could you be a worthless spirit? Even though Zhu Rong did not favor Su Yu, she could not believe it either. Zhao Guang was utterly confused. Su Yu's quick rise to power suddenly seemed like a meteor blazing across the sky, only to crash to the ground. How could he have a worthless spirit? In the midst of all the confusion, Su Yu's expression remained calm. Only he knew how he got his level of perception. His level of perception was not extraordinary. The reason it appeared so was thanks to the illusion brought about by speeding up time 200 times. As for his cultivation speed, it was due to the consumption of large amounts of elixirs and natural treasures, not due to the absorption of vital energy. To have a worthless spirit was within reason. Slowly retracting his palm, Su Yu was disappointed. A feeling of bitterness slowly welled up in his heart. He had the 9-dragon cauldron, but was destined to forever be stuck at level 9 of the martial paths. What type of exciting world was the Zhenlong continent? How large was it? How many geniuses resided there? How many powerful warriors resided there? Was he destined to be trapped on a tiny island in the middle of the vast ocean, to be an ant his entire life? He had once promised the Duke of Xianyu that he would find an immortal elixir to cure his arm. He had once promised himself that he would become a successful person and control his own fate. All he had done in the past, did it have to stop here? My love for the martial paths still lives. Why was I given such a constitution? At this moment, Su Yu felt as though he had returned to the martial arts training institute overnight, back to the era where he was the weakest silver student. In half a year, he had blazed a path through the continent like a rising star. But today, he had been beaten back into his original shape. He was still the weakling he was half a year ago. Lu Guang, who feared Su Yu, laughed uncontrollably. Dragon and worm, ha ha ha, I was right. I, Lu Guang, am a dragon, and you will be an ant forever. Lu Guang's worry disappeared as he laughed heartily. Zhu Rong's eyes gradually turned cold. Splitting Yu and Xiana was a wise choice. Su Yu could feel everyone's eyes on him, but he stayed silent. He was too tired to rebut any insults. The words, worthless spirit, had decided Su Yu's fate. While multiple other talents would head to the Zhenlong continent and leave their mark on the world, the victor that had lorded over them would become a lonely, lost soul, destined to be an ant forever. The rays of the evening sun fell on Su Yu's figure, pulling a long and lonely shadow. No one could have guessed he was king of the century. Brother Yu. A soft, gentle voice spoke. A warm, smooth hand grabbed his palm. While it was gentle, it was persistent and forceful, sending a warming strength into Su Yu's soul. Chia Jingyu was bright and beautiful as she bravely held Su Yu's hand. This world still has me. It doesn't matter if this is an island or the mainland. I will go wherever you go. Su Yu was touched. At the lowest point of his life, her beautiful face still accompanied him. Life without her was going to be very, very lonely. Gripping her gentle hand, Su Yu fell silent for a moment, then looked up at Xuanhuan. Test her constitution. You will not be disappointed. Xuanhuan frowned. The spirit testing ball can only be used 8 times. Why should I waste it? Chia Jingyu grabbed Su Yu's hand tightly. There's no need, she insisted. Xuanhuan did not care about Chia Jingyu's pleas. Xuanhuan turned his gaze and brought the crystal ball forward. On the account that you're so down, I shall give you a chance and let her try, he teased. Brother Yu, I don't want to. Chia Jingyu refused. Su Yu ignored her, placing her small hands on the crystal ball. His gaze was calm, wearing a pitiful smile. If one day you return from the Zhenlong continent, please tell me what the outside world is like. A red glow grew, a radiant line of words flickering on the crystal ball's surface. Top-grade dark-class spirit. Xuanhuan, who was not expecting this situation, was dumbfounded. Dark-class constitutions were extremely rare within the Lixian faction. Including Xuanhuan, only a few core disciples had them. As for top-grade dark-class constitutions, they were the best constitutions within the faction. Only one other person until now had one, the top disciple within the Lixian faction. Her appearance would cause an uproar in the faction. Xuanhuan's gaze shifted. If he dragged her under his teacher's tutelage, what type of rewards would he get? He did not realize that Chia Jingyu was blushing, staring at Su Yu with tears in her eyes. Brother Yu, how will you manage alone here? Su Yu gently let go of Chia Jingyu and gave her a stern smile as he shook his head. I have a pair of eyes helping me see the outside world. I will not be lonely. Xuanhuan was eager to get his reward. The test was over and they should return soon. Wearing a gentle smile, Xuanhuan was extremely polite. Junior, time will not wait for us, we should move now. He looked at Zhao Guang, Meng Lang, and Lu Guang. What are you all in a daze for? Board the Garuda, we leave immediately. Lu Guang's expression fell. Ever since the discovery of Qia Jingyu's top-grade dark-class constitution, he had become negligible in the eyes of Xuanhuan. The promise made earlier had fallen through, making him feel uneasy. Qia Jingyu's eyes did not look away from Su Yu. After a moment, she shut her eyes. When she reopened them, she was crying. She smiled. Brother Yu. One day, I'll definitely come back to tell you. She sobbed. As she wept, Qia Jingyu's words were lost in the wind. From this day on, she would be in a bigger, wider world, and Su Yu would be lonely once again. Wait. Junior Cow, I have a granddaughter. Her potential might be pretty good, Zhu Rong hurriedly said. Xuanhuan's nostrils flared. Who cares about your granddaughter? I need to report back to the faction immediately. Get lost. Let's wait for her granddaughter. Qia Jingyu was still confused. Xuanhuan's expression turned gentle. He had to respect Qia Jingyu. All right, go and return quickly. Xuanhuan waved his hand, impatient. Zhu Rong thanked him, hurriedly making her way to the Fenguang Pavilion and bringing over Xiana, who was cultivating her abilities. Xiana was unaware Su Yu had arrived. She was even more clueless as to where her grandmother was taking her, arriving before the Garuda in confusion. Place your hands on this, Xuanhuan said quickly, his heart impatient. Xiana did not even have the time to take in her surroundings before Zhu Rong pressed her little hand onto the crystal ball. The red light flashed, a line of words clearly visible. Medium-grade dark-class constitution. The clearly visible words caused the impatient Xuanhuan to laugh. Ha ha, another dark-class constitution. It's even a medium-grade dark-class constitution. Obtaining 2 dark-class constitutions in a row, Xuanhuan had never been this happy in his life. Zhu Rong's body shuddered, tears flowing down her face. Great. 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 The Zhu family has hope. This junior, please come here. Xuanhuan was extremely happy, smiling as he invited Qin Xiana up. Qin Xiana scratched her head in confusion, scanning her surroundings. She still had not processed the situation yet. At that moment, her big eyes scanned past a familiar figure. A familiar face, appearance, frame, and clothes. Although, his hair had become a mysterious silver and his pupils had become a royal purple. But his gaze was still the same as when he had protected her from the bloodbath in the Duke of Xianyu's manor. She might mistake a person's appearance, but she would never mistake a person's soul. Brother Su Yu. She had been pining for him for a long time. Now that he was in her sights, Qin Xiana threw herself in Su Yu's arms. She enjoyed the familiar embrace. The days of pining and farewells transformed into a sour emotion in her stomach. She broke into tears. Su Yu hugged Xiana, conflicted. Lu Guang's gaze turned cold. Getting off the Garuda and stepping forward, he grabbed Qin Xiana's shoulder and smiled. Junior Xiana, come together with Senior to a greater faction. Let's train together. All right. Xiana's shoulder shuddered, her eyes swollen from crying. She fiercely turned her head. I only want Brother Su Yu. I don't want to leave with you. Let go. Lu Guang's expression turned rigid. Why was Su Yu so important to her? She was throwing a tantrum. Lu Guang sighed. Xiana, both of us are dragons. Su Yu does not have the right. You both are destined to different worlds. Even if you love him, it is not meant to be. Xiana hooked her arms around Su Yu's neck. I don't believe it. Brother Su Yu is the best. Xuanhuan squinted his eyes. Junior Xiana, come with me. Su Yu is an ant. I don't believe it. Give me the crystal ball. Brother Su Yu is better than all of you all. Xiana extended her hand, asking for the crystal ball. I can test him one the last time, but you'll have to come with me after. Xuanhuan was a little impatient. How could 2 girls of considerable potential have such close connections with Su Yu? Xiana touched her sharp chin, chuckling as she hugged the crystal ball. She thrust it over to Su Yu expectantly. Brother Su Yu, try it quick. Tell them that you are the most powerful. In her heart, Su Yu was irreplaceable. Su Yu lovingly rubbed her forehead. Xianna, go with Jingyu first. After I finish dealing with the things here, I will follow, all right? He did not wish for Xianna to see him at the lowest point of his life. Brother Su Yu, you're not going to try it now. Show these people Brother Su Yu is the best. Chia Jingyu had tears in her eyes. Xianna, Brother Su Yu is even more spectacular than the rest of us. There will be someone more powerful to come fetch him. We will go first, and meet again soon. I see. Xianna smiled, smugly skipping up the Garuda. As I said, Brother Su Yu is the best. Waving her hand, Xianna laughed. Brother Su Yu, catch up with us quickly. Before flying, Xianna seemed to recall something. She whipped out a jade bottle from her sleeve and tossed it towards Su Yu. Xianna blushed, feeling a little shy. That. Grandma gave that to you. Yes, it was Grandma, not me. He grabbed it. It was a saint-grade spirit elixir and a divine-grade spirit elixir. Both bottles were filled with cracks and depressions as if they had been fought for. Su Yu's eyes turned red. Zhu Rong would never give those elixirs to him. The bottles had been deliberately collected and left for him by Xianna. Every elixir was filled with Xianna's innocent love. Xianna. An intense pain welled up within him. Xuanhuan was impatient, willing the Garuda to take to the skies. Looking at the Garuda fly further and further away, Su Yu watched until it turned into a black speck and vanished into the horizon. Tears welled up in Su Yu's eyes, a pain circulating his heart. He had been strong until today. His face still remained calm. But today, saying goodbye to Xianna and Jingyu made it difficult for him to suppress his grief. It felt like the earth had continued to turn without him, leaving him behind in the cold vortex of space. Xianna, Su Yu clenched his fist, forcing back his grief and his feelings of unjust. Li Guang was shocked for a long while, his expression filled with pity and compassion. He gently sighed. Su Yu, you, take care of yourself. A lifetime of normality does not mean that you cannot be happy. Since it had come to this, Li Guang could not find any words of consolation. Su Yu's fate was indeed unjust. At that moment, Li Guang looked over to the crystal ball in Su Yu's hand. The red glow was fading, showing the words, worthless spirit. He sighed. Su Yu, if you have nowhere to go, you can come back to the sanctuary. Oh. Li Guang suddenly let out a squeal of surprise. He watched as the words, worthless spirit, gradually lost their luster and another line of words came to replace it. Su Yu also noticed what was happening with the crystal ball, his gaze grave. The small words gradually came together. Judging from the length, they weren't the words, worthless spirit, but something else. Could this be Su Yu's true potential? As the words became clearer, Su Yu's heart rose to the top of his throat. The Divine Nine-Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 98. The Cruel Truth. Just what kind of constitution was that? Su Yu's heart was beating fast, his mind utterly confused. Was it a yellow class constitution? Or could it be a dark class constitution? Was it a legendary heaven or earth class constitution? After all, Su Yu's results were abnormal. The crystal ball was displaying two different results at the same time. Sizzle. The red light flickered and a line of words was clearly reflected. Low-grade abnormal spirit constitution. Li Guang's pupils contracted, losing his voice to shock. Abnormal spirit constitution. Su Yu was lost. It was not within the four classes of heaven, earth, dark, and yellow. He was uneasy, nervously asking, Holy King, is the abnormal spirit constitution suitable for cultivation? Coming back to his senses, Li Guang observed Su Yu as if seeing a monster for the first time. The edges of his mouth curled up. It seems naturally suitable for cultivation. Su Yu finally eased his heavy heart. The grief in his heart was completely gone, replaced by a newfound excitement. This would be his revival. Xianna and Jingyu, wait for me. I, Su Yu, will also step on the Zhenlong continent. Toning down the excitement in his heart, he pursed his lips. Holy King, what is an abnormal spirit? Heaven, earth, dark, and yellow constitutions cover the commonly seen constitutions, leaving out the rarer constitutions. These rare constitutions are all generally called abnormal spirits, Li Guang explained in shock. Some special people cannot absorb spirit energy and have worthless spirits, but within their bodies contain special items, like ingested treasures, or immortal personas. These treasures or personas can absorb spirit energy by themselves and help the owners cultivate it. These are abnormal spirits. You were tested to have a worthless spirit, which means you cannot absorb spirit energy by yourself. But a special item in your body can do that for you, and thus a second result appeared abnormal spirit. Su Yu understood. If his guess was correct, the red liquid from the 9-dragon cauldron had fused with his blood. He could not absorb spirit energy, but the mysterious red liquid could. When Xuanhuan tested him, he had been labeled a worthless spirit. That was because, after the test, Su Yu immediately had retracted his hand, leaving the crystal ball to display the words abnormal spirit. Li Guang continued, abnormal spirits are divided into high grade, medium grade, and low grade, based on their rate of absorption of spirit energy. But the lowest grade of abnormal spirits is equivalent to medium grade yellow class constitutions, the level Zhao Guang was at. There was something Li Guang had left out. Abnormal spirits were as rare as the heaven and earth classes and were often highly regarded. This was due to the fact that most objects that could automatically absorb spirit energy were wondrous treasures, and thus their owners could have unbelievable power. They are unique. Su Yu's incredible level of perception might have something to do with the special item within him. He smiled in relief. Not to mention medium-grade yellow class constitution, Su Yu was confident that he could compete at the mainland, even with a low-grade yellow constitution. The Garuda has left. Follow me and Zhu Rong to the Zhenlong continent, Li Guang said before he lifted his head to look at Zhu Rong. Zhu Rong coldly nodded. She agreed Su Yu's fate should not end here. He would ultimately step onto the Zhenlong continent. 2 days later, they hurried to the edge of the Fengguang Empire, facing the vast ocean. The two holy kings combined their holy powers, awakening a great deep-sea turtle from its slumber. This turtle was the same one they had taken here 100 years ago. The journey is long, 20 days. I don't have many days to live, and will spend all my effort teaching you, Li Guang said. He sternly looked at Su Yu as they boarded the turtle. Su Yu thanked him in gratitude. The Holy King had a month to live. This would be his last chance to teach Su Yu. Sitting down, Su Yu attentively listened to the Holy King. Your level of perception is out of the ordinary, and you have learned ice and thunder techniques. Your techniques are magnificent and I cannot critique them. All I can give you are pointers about the path your cultivation should follow. The realm of the Holy Kings is split into 7 levels. The secret is to improve your physical limits. For example, why did the strongest weapon in your arsenal, the Purple Star Thunderbolt, only leave Zhu Rong with minor wounds? That was because her physical body had already surpassed a mortal's. Thus, after you enter the realm of the Holy King, passing on to the next level is secondary. Absorbing spirit energy to improve your physical limits is the most important. Otherwise, you will never reach the realm of the dragon. Li Guang spoke of valuable experiences, and Su Yu would keep them forever etched in his heart. Within the Lixian faction, there are 4 techniques to boost your spirit energy. Of those, 3 are deity-level techniques. A book with the name Thousand Thread Mantra is the remnant of a spirit-level technique. With your level of perception, you should choose spirit-level techniques to cultivate and boost your spirit energy. This would be greatly beneficial for your future push into the realm of the dragon. Su Yu creased his brows slightly. Are there no complete spirit-level techniques? Li Guang laughed. You think spirit-level techniques are like cabbages on the street? Mortal-level techniques are split into basic, medium, advanced, saint, and deity levels. Spirit-level techniques can also be divided. Spirit-level techniques are split into legacy, immortal, and legendary levels. In the Lixian faction, Holy Kings can only come into contact with fractions of legacy-level techniques. Your purple star thunderbolt is a fragment of a legacy-level technique. Only powerful warriors within the realm of the dragon can come into contact with the entire legacy-level technique. Su Yu was surprised. Was a complete legacy-level technique so difficult to obtain? What about immortal level and legendary level techniques? Su Yu asked. Li Guang thought for a moment before saying, it is rumored that the master of the faction has a fragment of an immortal level technique. As for legendary level techniques, they are but the stuff of legends. Thus, it would be good for you to give Thousand Thread Mantra a read. Every person who had broken through to the realm of the dragon had read the Thousand Thread Mantra. Lastly, your holy decree is very special. Li Guang looked almost confused. There's a unique rhythm to your holy decree, never before seen, even in the holy decrees of 7th level holy kings. I hope you can continue developing your holy decree, and perhaps one day you could achieve a breakthrough. Holy Decree. Su Yu's Holy Decree was born from the elder in the wall painting. Could the Holy Decree pictured in that mural be extremely special? In the next 20 days, Su Yu achieved much progress with the help of the Holy King. After a good 2 weeks, the Zhenlong continent's shore came into view like a great monster rising from the waves. Su Yu awoke from his state of cultivation, his eyes flickering with excitement. The 13 St. Grade elixirs and the valuable Divine Grade elixir given to him by Xianna had been fully internalized with the help of Li Guang's spirit energy. Su Yu's cultivation level had risen from level 8 upper tier to level 9 upper tier. The Divine Grade elixir had unbelievable effects. Under the speed up of time, Su Yu had attained considerable progress with Purple Star Thunderbolt and his Holy Decree. Equivalent to 11 years of learning, he had finally touched the border of Stage 1 top class for Purple Star Thunderbolt. A few more days of practice and he may break through. His Holy Decree had gone from St. Grade to nearly Divine Grade, with just a bit more to go. Su Yu was grateful. The Holy King had gone from taunting and berating Su Yu, to becoming a treasured mentor in his final days. Both he and the Duke of Xianyu had given him a new lease on life, providing him the opportunities to change his life. Without them, Su Yu might still be a student in the Martial Arts Training Institute. Zhu Rong, please, help me bring Shi Ruolan a message. Before I return to the faction, I wish to meet with her privately. Li Guang would not immediately return to the faction after reaching the shore. Instead, he wanted to see Shi Ruolan. He had less than 10 days left to live, he couldn't wait for the faction to investigate. He wanted to meet Shi Ruolan to tell her the whole truth. Zhu Rong nodded. All right. Their meeting point would be where they currently stood, as it was close to Li Guang's family. His family resided at the top of the mountain range. They were a family close to the Liaxian faction, famous for their levels of cultivation. Returning from Xuanhuan Island after 100 years, Li Guang naturally had to visit his family before he died. Su Yu, before I die, I will definitely arrange a path for you in the faction. Li Guang had a charitable smile. After spending 2 weeks with Su Yu, he had grown fond of Su Yu's wit and personality. It caused regret to stir in his heart. All the other holy disciples were his personal disciples, but Su Yu, from the start until now, had never called him his teacher. Li Guang had not spent much time with Su Yu and had taught him far too little, and he had felt that it was inappropriate for Su Yu to call him his teacher. But on his deathbed, he wished he could hear those words just once. Li Guang stood with his hands behind his back, looking toward the vast ocean with a little disappointment. According to the plan, Shi Ruolan could reach the meeting place within 2 days. But she had not come. Shi Ruolan, does she still hate me? Li Guang sighed. The person he had loved for 100 years would not even give him the chance to explain himself on his deathbed. This was his life's greatest regret. Su Yu's purple eyes scanned the horizon. The person you were waiting for may have finally come. The Holy King looked in the direction Su Yu was facing. After a while, he clearly saw a human figure. Su Yu's vision, after the transformation of the 9-dragon cauldron, had improved tremendously. In the past, he could only see up to 5 miles. Now he could see clearly up to 20 miles away. At this moment, a woman flew over. She was dressed in a colorful robe, noble and elegant. Her appearance was gentle and prudent. As she landed, a sweet fragrance spread into the surroundings. Ruo, Lan, Li Guang's voice was shaking, his old frame trembling. He could not pull his eyes away from her. The woman before him was the lover he had pined for over 100 years, Ruolan. She was a 7th-level holy king, her biological limits far superior to a mortal's. Thus, she only looked 40 even after 100 years had passed. Li Guang was a 2nd-level holy king, his biological limits were only a little above a mortal's and so he was old and haggard. Compared to Li Guang, Ruolan was calm. Her eyes showed no emotion. Li Guang, you have become old. Ruolan's cold tone was unfeeling. The strained tone of voice brought Li Guang back to his senses. His face was laced with bitterness. After 100 years, any love or relationship they once had was gone. Ruolan, I invited you here to explain that the incident years ago was not caused by me. It was Han Ji. You. Do not be deceived by him. Please, leave him as soon as possible. Li Guang recollected himself, his voice high-pitched with anxiety. Now I have obtained the Lixian token. I will ask the master to investigate the matter thoroughly and our names will be cleared. Ruolan calmly looked over, her gentle eyes encircled with a cold glow. Yes, I know Han Ji violated me, not you, she said, her face unfeeling and distant. Li Guang froze as if he had been struck by lightning. You knew it was Han Ji and not me. Then why did you never say so? Why would you marry Han Ji? Ruolan was silent for a moment, because, after Han Ji, he said it would never happen again, that he would take me as his woman and help me cultivate my skills. He made me promise, to blame it on you, she murmured. Rumble. Li Guang's brain ached. He had once thought Ruolan had been lied to and that she thought he was the violator. But the truth was that Ruolan had framed him, together with Han Ji. Rumble. He had waited for 100 years, just to prove to Ruolan that he, Li Guang, was innocent. But after waiting for 100 years, he now learned the cruel truth. Ruolan, were you forced by Han Ji? Li Guang could not accept it. He would not believe his once love, the light that had kept him going for so long, was involved in the defamation of his name. Ruolan was unfeeling, her expression getting colder by the minute. Su Yu supported the Holy King, his eyes harboring a merciless aura. What a selfish woman, betraying her love for her future. Holy King, you do not need to demean yourself. You should be more concerned about why she's finally here to see you. Li Guang's heart skipped a beat. Ruolan had confessed to everything, how could she leave any witnesses? Ruolan's reason for coming today was to kill him. She was a 7th-level Holy King, Li Guang was only a 2nd-level Holy King. The difference in ability was heaven and earth. She could exterminate him with a flick of her finger. Li Guang would not even have the ability to fight back. Li Guang, how great would it have been if you had died of old age at Xuanhuan Island? Why must you force my hand? Ruolan calmly lifted a finger. Her killing intent materialized on the tips of her fingers. At that moment, Su Yu felt a tingle in his spine. His body went ramrod straight. With just a finger, he was paralyzed. The Divine Nine Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 99. Death of the Holy King. Facing a 2nd-level Holy King like Zhu Rong, Su Yu had a small chance. But a 7th-level Holy King could fully immobilize Su Yu with just a finger. It felt like he was a level 1 of the martial paths facing off against a level 9 of the martial paths. He was as minute as an ant, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. I, Li Guang, had spent 100 years of my life waiting. To think such a fate awaited me. Li Guang laughed pitifully. Li Guang seemed to have aged another 100 years. Disappointment and the will to die was written all over his face. Ruolan, you can kill me, but he is innocent. Can you spare him? Li Guang knew that he could not escape death today, but Su Yu had a chance. Ruolan's cold gaze fell onto Su Yu and she gently nodded her head. Suddenly, she turned and shot a horrifying bolt of vital energy towards Su Yu. Su Yu was facing an avalanche. It was as if he was in the evil forest again, toe-to-toe with a massive destructive force. No. Li Guang let out a low growl, pushing Su Yu away. Rumble. A great rumble reverberated around the surroundings. Blood sprayed everywhere and flesh flew in all directions. Li Guang's right arm was blown away, leaving only a fleshy stump. His blood sprayed out, covering Su Yu's face. It was warm. The smell of the blood caused Su Yu to freeze. Li Guang had used his body to block the lethal blow. Looking at the tall, old frame in front of him, Su Yu's soul shook. Run! Li Guang used his left arm to hug Su Yu, flying away. From their back came a gentle sigh, it's useless. Whoosh. They only saw a blur, before Ruolan was already calmly standing in front of them. Bitterness was ingrained in every feature on Li Guang's face. His gaze was resolute as he screamed, even if I die, I won't let him perish. Whoosh. Li Guang dodged in the other direction. Whoosh. Ruolan calmly shook her head, it's useless, die. Her figure vanished. Su Yu had managed to catch a glimpse of her. A jade-like hand rested on Li Guang's forehead without warning. She had closed the short distance between her and Li Guang without him noticing. It was too late when Li Guang finally realized what had happened. The jade-like hand gently pressed down. Squelch. A bloody hole appeared on Li Guang's lower back. His organs were clearly visible. At that moment, Li Guang had used his lower back to help Su Yu take the fatal blow. Holy King! Su Yu's heart trembled in grief. He had spent his entire life waiting, just to prove his innocence. Why did his fate end like this? Li Guang was pale as a sheet, his features contorted in pain. His haggard voice was pitiful, on the verge of a scream, I may die, but you cannot. Ruolan was calm, bringing her palm forward again as she gently sighed, it's useless. Blood evasion. Li Guang let out a furious howl, the blood from his right arm rising into the air. The blood in his body rose into the air, materializing into a veil of light that surrounded the two. Whoosh. The light pierced through the sky, followed by a trail of sonic booms. After a few flickers, it vanished beyond the horizon. Ruolan was slightly surprised. Her expression was grave, the forbidden evasion technique which eats at one's life force. Su Yu felt like he had been wrapped within a warm metallic liquid. He was separate from the events occurring around him. Li Guang's life force was critically low. Finally, after an hour, they fell onto the peak of a mountain. At the peak stood a solemn house filled with charming people. The atmosphere was filled with a soft light. Ah! Li Guang spat out a mouthful of blood, pale as a sheet. His breathing was incredibly shallow, on the verge of stopping at any moment. Quick! Help me! Over there, that is my family, the Li family. There is a barrier that protects the family. Ruolan cannot enter. Su Yu looked back, seeing a figure in colorful robes flying 60 feet away. Feeling Li Guang's life was coming to an end, Su Yu was in visible anguish. Why did it have to end this way after wasting 100 years of his life? He was being hunted by the person he had once loved. Why must he undergo such a cruel pain during the last moments of his life? We will be safe. When we reach home, I would never let you die. Li Guang's eyes were benevolent as he forced a smile. In front of the barrier, there were already people that noticed the arrival of Su Yu. Who are you? Li Guang's breathing was weak. He laughed bitterly, his bloody hand brandished a token from his sleeve. It was ancient and exquisite, the harshities of time evident in every curve and carving. Carved into it were the words Li Guang. Li Guang. That failure, Li Guang. It's him. The shame of the family. HMPH. Coming back after a century, heavily injured, he's probably back to beg for protection. Shameless. Whoosh. The voices of the crowd went silent. An elder with intertwining black and white hair dressed in a Taoist robe had stepped forward. He harbored a terrifying aura, no weaker than Ruolan's. You wish to seek the protection of the family. The Taoist-robed elder spoke, calmly looking into the horizon without emotion. It was as if Li Guang was a total stranger, rather than a family member. Li Guang's breath was shallow. He managed a light nod. The Taoist-robed elder laughed coldly. Do you think you still have the right to enter the Li family? Members of the Li family glared hatefully. Because of Li Guang, the family had been heavily ridiculed. They were still trying to repair their reputation. Li Guang shook his head with some difficulty. No. I, Li Guang, sinned greatly and brought shame to the family. I do not dare return to the family. Then why do you come? The Taoist-robed elder coldly questioned. Li Guang pushed Su Yu forward, his body buckling as he knelt on the ground. His head fell and his eyes were heavy. Soon, they would close for the last time. With blood in his mouth, Li Guang pleaded feebly, I beg of you all, let him in. Holy King. Su Yu knelt on the ground, looking at the approaching Ruo Lan. His heart burned with hatred. Why must she hunt such a haggard old man? Outsiders are forbidden to enter the Li family. You should go back. The Taoist-robed elder coldly refused and turned to leave. Thud. A low sound came from behind him. Looking back, Li Guang's forehead was slammed heavily on the ground. His remaining left hand was balled in a fist. His voice was pitiful, drawing on what little energy he had left as he hoarsely shouted, I beg of all of you, let him in, for the sake of former family. This bow silenced heaven and earth. Time and space shared his grief. His actions were immeasurably pitiful. The voice of grief reverberated throughout the earth. During the last moments of his life, all Li Guang could do was protect Su Yu. His hoarse voice, his pitiful shout, his feelings of grief. How was he the same holy king that had stood at the peak of the Shenyu continent? Su Yu was in anguish, his eyes swollen from crying. He scanned the heartless members of the Li family. Holy King, do not beg him. I, Su Yu, do not care about my life. I will not allow you, the Holy King, to demean yourself for me. Li Guang lifted his head before bowing again. Thud. His voice was hoarse, sad, and pitiful. I beg of all of you, I may die. But please, do not let him die, I beg of all of you. Listening to the pitiful voice reverberating around the lonely mountain, everyone in the Li family was dazed. The Taoist-robed elder was silent for a moment. Then, he calmly turned to leave, open the gates. Should we let Su Yu in alone, or? Before the Taoist-robed elder disappeared he scowled, a member of the Li family dying at our gates would disgrace the ancestors, bring him in too. Several elders lifted the barrier and brought the two of them in. In that moment, Ruo Lan descended. She lifted her eyebrows as she looked at the barrier. She circled outside the barrier, unable to enter, but unwilling to return. At the backyard of the Li family manor, Li Guang clung to the last thread of his life. He leaned on the wall, his eyes heavy and nearly shut. Blood had stopped flowing from his wound. There was no more blood left to flow. Holy King. Su Yu was full of guilt. If not for him, Li Guang would not have been so heavily injured. The grave injuries of his right arm and lower back were all sustained in an effort to shield Su Yu. Li Guang trembled as he extended his left arm, caressing Su Yu's forehead. He conjured a compassionate smile. It's fine, you're fine now, he said weakly. It's me. I let you down. Li Guang's voice trembled. Holy King, stop talking. Your clansmen have gone to fetch medicine. Su Yu's soul trembled, grief welling up within him. Li Guang smiled and he slightly shook his head. Do not grieve. I will die sooner or later. But, before I die, your path, I have to arrange it for you. He trembled as he took out a token and a letter. The token was the Liaxian token, and the letter was addressed to the master of the Li family. Give this letter to the master of the Li family. He will arrange for you to take part in the recruiting contest for the disciples of the Liaxian faction in 5 days. You can enter the Liaxian faction. The token. Take the token. If you have the chance to meet the master of the faction, plead with him to take you as a disciple, so you won't get harmed by Han Ji. Su Yu had tears in his eyes. It turned out that Li Guang had prepared a letter to help Su Yu in the future. I would definitely get the Lixian faction to investigate the incident. I will use the token to clear your name. Su Yu held the Lixian token in his hands, feeling grief and fury. This was the lifelong wish of Li Guang. Li Guang's eyes slowly closed as he weakly shook his head. There's no need for that anymore. Leave it for yourself. Survive. All I can do for you is this much. Li Guang gradually closed his eyes, his lips forming a lonely smile. He would forever die with regret in his heart. Teacher! Su Yu screamed to the heavens. Grief filled his chest. He was set ablaze with a burning hatred. Li Guang's lonely smile transformed into a smile of relief. You finally called me. Teacher. He murmured softly, each word full of content as they were lost to the wind. His final breath extinguished. Along with a full body of blood and the remnants of a relieved smile, a holy king silently passed on. Teacher. Su Yu's voice was trembling. He knelt on the floor and bowed. They were together for less than a month, but it had felt like so much longer. Su Yu knelt for a long time. His eyes were swollen from crying and traces of his tears were still visible on his face when he slowly opened his red, angry eyes. His silver hair flew out behind him, his purple robe dancing in the wind. Members of the Li family realized snowflakes had started to fall on the mountain peak, where it never snowed. Li Guang's body was covered with the snowflakes. The snow soon crystallized into ice, deeply freezing his remains. The peaceful smile would forever be immortalized in ice. Su Yu bowed 3 times, his expression peaceful, but detached. Murderous rage laced his grief. Teacher, your disciple swears to the heavens that I will take the head of your enemy and clear your name. Su Yu looked up to the snow-filled sky. He swore to the heavens, he swore to time and space. Han Ji and Ruo Lan. Su Yu would not rest in peace until he had killed them. The recruitment contest for disciples of the Lixian faction would start in 5 days. Han Ji, Ruo Lan, watch out. I, Su Yu, would take your heads, no matter the cost. Su Yu clenched his fists, furiously howling at the sky. The Divine 9-Dragon Cauldron. Chapter 100, Marrow Cleansing Elixir. The Taoist-robed elder stood outside the yard, his eyes looked at Li Guang's corpse with cold doubt before he left silently. Su Yu's eyes flashed as he followed the elder. You are the master of the Li family? Su Yu asked as he chased after him. Whoop. Su Yu whipped out the letter Li Guang had passed to him before he died. The envelope was white as snow, laced with the red from blood-soaked fingerprints. The Taoist-robed elder opened the envelope to read the letter, slightly nodding his head. All right, I got it. After saying this, he silently left. Much later, deep into nightfall, Su Yu sat in his room. A servant from the Li family came forward to deliver a message. Mr. Su, the master wants to see you. Please follow me. Su Yu was brought to the meeting hall of the Li family, where the juniors of the family had already gathered. The youngest there was 15 years old, the oldest not above 20. But their cultivation levels were shocking. The weakest person, a 15-year-old youth, was at level 9 upper tier of the martial path. The strongest person was a 20-year-old youth. Spirit energy surrounded him. His cultivation level had nearly broken through into the realm of the Holy King. The 10 youths could easily exterminate every single talent from Xuanhuan Island in the past 100 years. 5 days from now is the disciple recruiting contest held by the Lixian faction every 5 years. All of you have to bring glory for the family. You must fight to improve the ranking of the family in the 100 affiliate families within the Lixian faction. The Taoist-robed elder sternly ordered. Yes, master. The youths were excited. The Lixian faction had 100 affiliate families. The Li family was amongst those, ranked 30th. But even ranked 30th, they were still very powerful. How many talents are there in total between in the 100 affiliate families? Just how powerful is the Lixian faction? Just how difficult is the recruitment contest? If you become a minor disciple of the Lixian faction, you shall be rewarded with 3 low-grade marrow cleansing elixirs. If you become a major disciple of the Lixian faction, you shall be rewarded with a medium-grade marrow cleansing elixir, and be considered as a candidate for the position of master of the family. The eyes of the youth sparkled. The rewards were great as long as they managed to become disciples of the Lixian faction. Becoming a major disciple would actually secure you as a candidate for being the next master of the family. We set off tomorrow for the Lixian faction. Prepare yourselves. Give out the elixir, the Taoist-robed elder coldly ordered. He waved his sleeves and 11 jade bottles flew toward the youths. One of the bottles flew towards Su Yu and he grabbed it. He did not understand, even he got one. Within the jade bottle was a pale blue elixir. A peculiar fragrance wafted from the bottle. He took a small whiff and his body felt as though it had been purified, shocking him. Low-grade marrow cleansing elixir. We usually only take one of these every festive occasion. The contest is a big deal and there was an exception to the rule. This is simply surprising. A martial artist consuming this would purify his body, lowering the difficulty of entering into the realm of the Holy King. Holy Kings consuming this would improve their mortal body and raise their biological limits. It is extremely precious and cannot be bought with money. Su Yu was extremely surprised. The marrow cleansing elixir was this precious. The master left. The youths in the hall were all excited. At that moment, some of their eyes fell upon Su Yu. More specifically, they looked at the low-grade marrow cleansing elixir in his hands. That's weird. Even a person not from the Li family got one. Does it matter if he's entering the contest? A young girl looked at him harshly. Obviously, they were feeling disgusted that an outsider had access to their treasures. Su Yu's expression was calm, disregarding her words as he turned to leave. Stop right there. You can leave, but the elixir stays behind. A youth of level 9 peak of the martial paths stepped forward quickly and blocked his path, looking for a fight. Su Yu shook his head slightly. You are not my opponent. Make way. An outsider dares to be so brazen. The level 9 peak youth let out a laugh. He punched forward towards Su Yu's chest. A little impatient, Su Yu raised his finger, tapping on the youth's fist. Sizzle. It was as if the youth had been electrocuted. He retracted his fist hastily, shaking out the cold pain. He was furious. What icy hidden weapons are you using? Despicable. Again. At this point, many of the juniors were observing the fight. The youth did not want to lose face. He furiously grunted, attacking with his fist again. You should stop. You are truly not his equal, a cold stern voice said, short but forceful. The youth's eyes filled with fear and respect. He immediately retracted his fist, feeling a little unjust. Brother Konghui, you underestimate me too much. I was only careless and got wounded by a hidden weapon. I have the advantage when it comes to cultivation level. How could I lose to him? He softly muttered. You didn't even realize that the opponent used a top-class deity level technique. It would be weird if you really did manage to defeat him, Li Konghui scolded him, walking forward with big strides. His frame was slender, his features sharp. He had a bed of short hair and his gaze was similar to a panther's, piercing and soulful. He had passed level 9 peak of the martial paths, approaching the realm of a holy king. He was a genius. Top-class deity level technique. Some of the juniors were surprised, retracting their belittling looks. Cultivating a top-class deity level technique wasn't weird. What was weird was how young Su Yu was. They could see how high Su Yu's level of perception was. The crowd looked at each other. No one stepped forward to challenge Su Yu. Among them, some of them felt they could definitely defeat Su Yu. But his level 9 upper-tier cultivation base together with a top-class deity-level technique made him an above-average opponent. Even though the level 9 peaks who had cultivated top-class deity-level techniques, as well as Li Konghui, who had almost reached the realm of the Holy King, could easily defeat Su Yu, the others would have to spend greater energy in order to do so. In the hall, disgracing themselves was a small matter, but bringing about the discipline of the elders was not to be taken lightly. So may I go? Su Yu asked calmly. His heart had not recovered from the death of Li Guang. He did not have the energy to continue the dispute. Li Konghui slowly touched his chin. Giving outsiders a Li family elixir is unusual. But, on account of Li Guang, you may keep the elixir this time, but this shall not happen again. We, the Li family, are not a charitable organization. We cannot keep giving them to you out of pity. If you understand, you may leave. Was the elixir charity? Su Yu's expression was calm. He took out the elixir, stuffing it into the hand of the level 9 peak youth before leaving. Li Guang had bowed and begged for them to accept Su Yu. In the eyes of Su Yu, that was already the Li family's unwilling act of charity. Accepting charity once was enough. Had he accepted it another time, he would find it hard to recover. The crowd was dumbfounded. He's a person who bullies the weak but fears the strong. When Brother Li Miu wanted it, he fought back. But when Brother Konghui wanted it, he suddenly became a coward. No. It seems like he has a strong pride. He felt that he was being humiliated and tried to retain his dignity by returning the elixir. Now he must feel the pinch in his heart, suffering for the sake of his dignity. Su Yu rejecting the act of charity had caused the disciples of the Li family to be annoyed and disgusted by him. Li Konghui gently creased his brows, slightly shaking his head. You will not go very far being this proud. Entering the house, Su Yu was surprised to discover a jade bottle and a jade box placed on his table. Within the bottle was a pale blue elixir, the low-grade marrow cleansing elixir. In the box was 2 crystalline films, each the size of a fingernail. At the side was a note. Firstly, the elixir was not an act of charity. Li Guang had volunteered to remove his name from the Li family roster to exchange for 3 items. The first is the marrow cleansing elixir. The second was the right to enter the recruitment contest held by the Lixian faction, and the third was a request for the films to cover your pupils with. These were all prepared for you. It is up to you whether to accept them or not, Su Yu read aloud. Secondly, Li Guang was wronged. He was a man full of justice, definitely not a rapist. But I had to care for the entire Li family, and while I knew that he was wronged, I cannot fight against the entire Lixian faction. If you enter the faction and have a chance, please clear his name. Thirdly, Li Guang should have been executed back then, but 2 elders within the Lixian faction protected him, and they banished him to Xuanhuan Island instead. If you have the chance, you can ask to go under them for protection, Su Yu finished. Even though there was no indication of a name, it was unquestionable that it was the master of the Li family who had written the note. He knew that Li Guang was wronged, but Han Zhi's authority was strong. As an affiliated family, the master of the Li family had to think of the entire family and could not contest their decision. They had not even dared come too close to Li Guang when he returned from 100 years of exile. They could only look at him with cold eyes. A dedicated family member had suffered before them, but they could only treat him as a stranger, leaving Li Guang alone as he died. It was agonizingly cruel. Holding the marrow cleansing elixir, Su Yu was in grief. Li Guang had already planned for Su Yu's future before facing Shiruolan. The price he paid was removing his name from the family roster. His existence was a black spot in the Li family. By removing his name from the roster, many members of the Li family were elated. But to an elder who had been a vagrant for 100 years, wasn't his ancestral home his final resting place after his death? For Su Yu, he had given up his final resting place. By removing his name from the roster, he had given up on the right to be buried within the tombs of the Li family. Su Yu was indescribably grateful. Su Yu placed the 2 crystalline films into his eyes. His abnormal purple pupils were covered, and the seal of time that he had difficulty controlling was temporarily sealed without the need to close his eyes. Li Guang had considered everything. Su Yu ingested the low-grade marrow cleansing elixir. The elixir entered his body, the wondrous medicinal properties seeping into his limbs. His body felt as though it was thoroughly cleansed of any mortal filth. As time passed, a thin film with a nasty odor was dispelled from within him through his pores. The sticky film was composed of the impurities within his bones and flesh. It was the result of years of eating and breathing impurities. They had settled within the body, impairing a person's ability to fuse with nature. After dispelling those, Suyu felt cleansed, as if returning to his most primal self. His body felt hollow and in harmony with nature. His face looked energized, as if reborn. Based on his intuition, his biological limits should have had a slight change, getting him closer to the constitution of a holy king. The elixir also harbored a large amount of energy, pushing Suyu's cultivation level to level 9 peak. The marrow cleansing elixir lives up to its reputation. Even though it was a low grade, its effects are remarkable. Suyu exclaimed, surprised. He could faintly sense huge amounts of energy in the air. It was spirit energy. Sensing spirit energy was the first step. Next, he needed to absorb it. If he was able to absorb spirit energy, he would be that much closer to entering the realm of the Holy King, similar to where Li Konghui was. Suyu was currently at step 1, still far away from entering the realm of the Holy King. If only I could have 10 more low-grade marrow-cleansing elixirs, I should be able to almost enter the realm of the Holy King, Suyu muttered. But he later shook his head, mocking himself. He was lucky to have gotten 1 elixir. The Li family knew any more would help him, but they simply didn't care. The next day, the team set off. But before setting off, Suyu asked for the body of Li Guang. Li Guang could not be buried within the Li family tombs, but his body had not yet been discarded. Suyu buried him at an abandoned hill behind the manor. Suyu knelt in prayer. Teacher, your disciple will set off now. I will not return before taking the heads of Hanji and Shiruolan. In his heart, Suyu had another wish. He wanted to bury Li Guang's body within the Li family tombs, returning Li Guang to his roots. Li Guang had been alone for all his life. He should not continue to be lonely in death. A group of 11 made their way to the Lixian faction. The master of the Li family, who was the Taoist-robed elder, led the way. Along the way, the juniors of the Li family were chatty, exchanging pointers about cultivation and practicing with each other. Suyu, however, was alone, left out by the juniors of the Li family. Multiple days of travel later, they set foot in front of the Lixian faction. A weird yet marvelous sight greeted them. Within the wilderness was an opulent palace, vast beyond imagination. Pavilions and houses floated in the air, like a playground for the gods. Celestial fog surrounded the palace and spiritual beasts were prowling around. Occasionally, spiritual figures flew around in the sky. The multiple first-time visitors deeply trembled. The scene before them seemed to have come out of an ancient legend. At that moment, the heavenly gates had congregated close to 1,000 martial artists. The top 10 talents from each of the 100 affiliate families had arrived. Oh, Suyu, a voice nearby shrieked in shock. There was a person who recognized Suyu here, and his voice was slightly familiar. End of the chapter. The Divine Nine Dragon will be read in 5 chapters for every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday. Please leave this sound novel and press subscribe, follow, and the bell so you don't miss any new clips as well. See you.